Welcome to Insightful Journeys, a podcast that explores the remarkable stories of individuals who are shaping the world around us. I'm your host, and I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Mr. Sbu Ngalwa. As a renowned journalist, Sbu has had an illustrious career, holding high-ranking roles at esteemed publications and serving as the chairperson of South African National Editors Forum. What's truly fascinating about Sbu is not just his journalism career, but his bold decision to leave formal employment and pursue his passion for farming. Ngalwa's experience and expertise in the media industry make him a significant figure in South African journalism. In this episode, we'll delve into Sbu's journey, exploring the lessons he's learned, the challenges he's overcome, and the values that drive him. We'll discuss his experience in journalism, his transition to farming, and the insights he's gained along the way. So sit back, relax, and join us on this insightful journey with Sbu Ngalwa. Later, welcome to Insightful Journeys.
Thank you, Davan. I'm honored to be here. I've seen the first episode of this podcast, and I feel honored to be sitting on this chair.
Thank you very much, Letta, even for making time. We know you are not an idling man, but for setting time apart to be with us is really an honor to us. We know ukuthi yonke into kukwindawo eqala kuyo. Can you tell us, share a story with us a bit about what triggered your interest in journalism?
Davan, I know most people would expect that I would say that it was because I loved this, that, or the other. It was money. And how?
So there's money.
You might be thinking, no, man, how is it? Because journalism right now, man.
Yeah.
How can I be? Yes, I was misinformed, but it was a good one. In that, my father, the one day he came home, and he was just talking about a family friend, the son of a family friend, who was doing he was a freelance reporter at the Daily Dispatch. And my father said many things, but what stuck with me was when he said, no, this guy, he's a freelancer, they pay him R1 a word. So I was stunned. I'm like, so this guy can write just 300 words and get 300 rand. I don't even get 10 rand as pocket money. I'm like, no, man, this thing,
this is what I want.
This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
There's money in this thing. And I thought there was money at that time. And that's besides the fact that, yes, I was good in language, I was good in the written word, I was part of the debating society at Skoloini, and generally I would have been driven into the arts. Sure. But that particular conversation drove me to journalism. But fast forward to 2001, I moved up to Durban, to the then ML Sultan Technikon, which later merged with Natal. Yeah. Technikon became what is now known as the Durban University of Technology. Yes. I did my national diploma there, and it was pleasant. And then 3 years later, we started as interns at independent newspapers. We were interviewed. They wanted 4 interns, and I think we impressed them. They took 6 from our lot. And it was meant to be a 6-month internship at the beginning of 2003. And I believe in one thing, that once one get in that way, and if you really want to be there, it's up to you.
Yes.
You know, what was meant to be a 6-month internship actually ended up, I never left eventually because I became a freelance reporter after that. Then I was hired on a contract, then I became permanent. And the reason why that happened, Dawana, is that I always made sure I really wanted it. So I argue to people and I advise people that if you really, really want something, you have to be willing to give up something. What are you willing to give up to gain that which you want? In my case, I gave up my weekends.
Okay.
I gave up as a young person of Joel or anything. I was at work 7 days a week. On a Friday, it's a Friday, and everyone is going off because they're going to the movies or they're going home or whatever. I'm not be sitting there in the newsroom. And at that time, independent newspapers had a system which was a hub. Yeah. And the hub was that there was no reporter that is assigned to a specific newspaper. Story. So everyone is in a pool. Which then means that the weekend newspapers don't get serviced because everyone wants to work during the week and then they are off on a weekend. So on a Friday, the news editor for Saturday, Independent on Saturday would look around because the story is broken and there's no one else. She would curse and she would bang phones and not just be sitting there waiting to be assigned.
Assign me.
And she would not assign me because she believes in me. Yeah. She has no choice. But what that would do is that on a Saturday I'd be published. On a Saturday in December 17, they look around, the same thing happens. Ubanokoyo, there's that intern.
Yeah.
And what that meant is that over in the 6 months, I think I was close to filling up my scrapbook. But also people start noticing you, because there's that hunger.
Yeah.
And after the 6 months, I became a freelance reporter. I would replace an old man who was called Farouk Khan. When he goes on leave, he was an afternoon reporter. I would be there. So I used to pray, but Farouk. So that is on but may his beautiful soul rest in peace.
Wow.
But that was it. And then later I joined Sunday Tribune as a general reporter, but I always wanted to do politics. So there is a general philosophy, I think it's a physics one, that says nature doesn't allow for a vacuum. Right?
Yes.
Because there was no politics reporter at the Sunday Tribune, I made sure to write politics. And that's how I ended up as the politics reporter of the Daily News. And 2-3 years later, I was in Parliament. I was in Cape Town, on Plain Street. And this was a time when I thought I would be in Parliament, maybe in my 30s. But I was only 23.
God brought it closer.
Yes. And from there, I never looked back. From Parliament, spent 2 good years in Parliament, developed sources, grew stronger in my politics reporting, moved to the Sunday Independent, joined the Sunday Times. I think the Sunday Times is where I would say that's where the rocket took off, because I did my best journalism as part of the politics team of the Sunday Times. And 2014, I was appointed as the bureau chief of the Sunday Times in KZN. Moved to KZN. 2 years later, 2016, I came back as the political editor briefly. And 2016, February, I started in East London as the editor-in-chief of the Daily Dispatch.
Yes.
And I will tell you a story actually about the Daily Dispatch, about why coming to the Daily Dispatch was special for me. Because I'd been rejected as an intern. By the Daily Dispatch.
Wow.
In my earlier years. But I guess what is God ordained and what is meant for you is meant for you. Sometimes that temporary setback is actually setting you up for greater things.
Certainly.
But we'll get to that.
Yeah. Wow. We're still chatting to Mr. Sbu Ngalwa, an entrepreneur, a farmer, and a journalist of note. Sbu, you've had an illustrious career in journalism, holding high-ranking roles, as we have alluded to, at esteemed publications. What were some of the most significant lessons that you've learned during your time in journalism?
I think the one important thing that I learned in journalism is not actually journalism related. It's actually about one's behavior and one's conduct and how one carries themselves. And it is why it is so important that when you are imbued with the power and you are also clothed with the authority of being a manager and a leader, you have to lead. One of the things, because I worked with editors, sometimes I'd be frustrated because of people who are indecisive. Then I worked with one editor who was very decisive. And she'll just decide. Doesn't matter whether she's right or wrong, she makes a decision. I admired that.
Yeah.
And as a leader, you can't be indecisive. You have to be decisive as a leader. Even if the decision is wrong, that's good. In that you make a mistake, you fail fast, and you move on. That's what I learned. And that has helped me in later years to understand that indecision is actually a decision.
Yeah.
You have decided not to decide. I don't know if I'm making sense. Right? So if you are leading people, they are looking up to you and they are waiting for you to lead them.
Yeah.
So make a decision. And part of leadership is also about making mistakes so that you can become better. Because if you do not make those mistakes, then you do not become better. You frustrate everyone around you. So that was the one thing that I would say I walked away with. I apply that in every facet of my life. I'm presented with 2 scenarios, I make a consideration, and I make a call.
Sure.
And that's it. And I think that's it. That's an important thing that I still take with me every day.
Yeah, offline, you also talked about something very, very profound when you were under the editorship of Mr. Mtomboti.
Yes.
Yeah, can you take us back then?
Banim Mtomboti, I remember him fondly. He was actually a very strange character. I mean, he wouldn't say much, but when he speaks, he had authority. And he had this tendency. He used to wear short boots, ankle boots. And then he'd come to your desk, and say, what nonsense is this?
Yeah.
So he used to say, I mean, before the paper is printed, it goes to the printers. There is actually a proof, a printed page that the editor goes through just to make sure after it's been subbed that there are no mistakes. So Bunny would sit there and says, but what have you written? And then I'm trying to explain. I said, no, this is what I meant. He says, but why didn't you say that? I say, it's there in the board. He says, no. If what you are telling me is how you should write your story, don't write some jumbled up intro that doesn't make sense, because journalism is about the impact. It's about the number of people it impacts. He used to say, if you have a story, you think you've got a hot, short story, sit back and ask yourself, how many people will be impacted by this story? And that has helped me throughout my journalism career to understand that journalism is not just about writing stories. It's also about that impact, because when you are sitting as a news editor, you are sitting with a number of stories. You have to decide the priority of those stories. A simple example, if there are two stories about increase in airfare and in taxi fare, now, if you are middle class, you'll say, okay, taxes are going up. Sure, that's important. But your flights are going up. Because when you are middle class, you consider that to be more important. When the reality is that. So once you apply this test of public interest versus what is interesting to the public, later was to understand that that's actually what it is. Once you apply that test, you realize that your own biases, you must put them aside and measure the impact, because there are 60% of our commuting public, from what I understand from the statistics way back when, who use taxis. So that then means that the story of people or the story of taxi fares going up is more important than that of airlines, because it is the elite that fly, while taxis are used by the majority of South Africans. So those are important lessons that one learns along the way, and that was taught to me in the early years, and that helped me throughout life, just to discern and to understand what is important and to filter through the stories.
Sure. And obviously, Sbu, you've covered a plethora of stories, and there's that one particular story that stood out. Even when you think about it, you say, we did justice in this particular area of reporting.
Dr. Wane, I've covered a number of stories, and we've broken a number of stories which I was proud of. I mean, I've covered politics, I've covered parliament, the Zimbabwe elections of 2013, Mozambique, SADC. I've traveled the length and breadth of this continent and other parts. But the one story that, in fact, the story actually of Omantuli being kicked out of Nkandla. The people who brought that story was the team I led at Sunday Times. It was one of the most difficult stories, actually. It's also a story that talks about how dangerous journalism can be. But that's just one story, because it's a story of pain for her. But to us, we got into the belly of the beast. We get into Nkandla to understand what was happening in this household. But it was also a dangerous one, because there was a lot of pressure. There was political pressure. There was the police, but also there was the intelligence. So it was just madness. But the one story that I still feel proud of, and it underlines the very point I was making earlier, of how journalism is about changing lives, is a story we did at the Daily Dispatch when I was the editor-in-chief. And the headline on that weekend, it was the Saturday Dispatch, it said, "We found them." And we had emblazoned the front page with the faces of mine workers who were due for pensions, but the pension company was saying, we can't find these people. And how this story came about was actually a very organic, because normally, periodically, you'd get adverts, and these adverts in the newspaper, where it says that everyone who worked at these mines during these years, please come and see if you don't have outstanding pensions. And I remember Lance Cherry, who was my chief sub at that time, says, but these people keep making these adverts, but where are these people? And we had a discussion at conference, and we said, okay, let's now assign a reporter to first find out where are these people. Do they have a list of these people? And the reporters were assigned Bongani Fukuzile at that time, working with Michael Pinyana as a photographer. They got the list. We had a list of over 4,000 names. So Tabane, over 2-3 weeks, those journalists traveled the length and breadth of the Eastern Cape. And we came back, we took a sample of about 40 names. And we came back, and they came back and they said, we even had their pictures. So we ran that story on the front page and says, which actually disproves this claim by these pension companies, where they claim they're looking for, they're not. There is something called malicious compliance, where it's like, okay, we owe people pension, so let's just say we're looking for them. We've put out an advert, but you can do more. We, without investigative capacity, without anything, it's just 2 people. And the list of 40 went out there, and we found a number of people, and we came back and said we found them. How much more if this company could have done it? That is what journalism is about. And that story, Tabane, didn't just stop there. We sat in conference, said, okay, now we found them, guys. How do we treat this story? And there were a number of discussions. And I remember Mahadeve in a church saying, but these people don't understand, though, English. What are we going to say? And we had a number of discussions. We had to debate, and we said, okay, we're going to do posting as course. So an
something
English
that is unconventional,
an English medium newspaper, Daily Dispatch, a headline as a clause. And there was opposition from some members of the team saying, no, but this is not us. We're not Isoles. I said, it's not about that. It's about making an impact. Journalism is about making a difference. And I took a decision as I said that we're doing it. And we did a poster that says, Nalu Luhlu Lamagama Kwateba. And we put that out there. And we ran a bigger print run, and we printed each and every name. And that story actually had so much impact. Because people were looking for this list. We sold out that weekend. And we actually, even our department of distribution were a bit conservative. We had a higher print run, but we're a bit conservative. But we sold out, which underlines the correctness of the decision, because this is about the number of people the story impacted. And we know, Taban, that the Eastern Cape is synonymous with migrant labor. You know, that story was so personal, even for me, because the names of my 2 uncles, late uncles, were on that list, you know. And we had it in the paper. There was so much demand. We put it online. And I'm sure thousands of people and families were able to claim. Because here I was. Every time I see this advert as editor, it means nothing to me. But until I go through the list, they are the names of my own relatives. So that, for me, Tabane, is the one story which I'm still very proud of, and which I think best underlines what journalism is about. And we won all the awards that year. 2018, we cleaned the slates. Vodacoms, Sikoviles, you name it. And that's why also for me at the end of 2018, it was easy to say, you know what, I think they're right. Because there was nothing, I couldn't surpass that as the editor. That was actually the best, one of the finest moments in my journalism.
That was great, leaving the dance floor while the music is still pumping. Well, what an insightful journey. And then 8 years ago, I'm a witness of this. 8 years ago, you made that bold decision to start farming. What is it that inspired that career shift?
Again, the money was money.
Again, I
was to learn that there's not that much money in farming, but yes, I will find the money eventually. So I had left the Eastern Cape in 2001 to study in KZN. So my adult life, I spent it in KZN. So and to learn things, it was in KZN. In fact, I can show you the back streets of Durban. I know Durban better than I know any other place, right? But I always felt that there was this disconnect with the Eastern Cape. Although there's some holidays, mostly relationship ne-town uyaxa uyothengela iimpahla zeChristmas, right?
Yes.
Or nibuya
Yes, I
straight
can
kwa-sales
relate.
house or kwa-jet apho kwenza khona i-labour, kwathanda abantu apho kwenza khona i-labour,
Yeah.
and then ubuye. So when I came back as the editor-in-chief of the Daily Dispatch, I took a decision to explore the Eastern Cape. So I used to drive a lot to places like Coffee Bay, to places like Port Alfred and all of that. But I used to marvel at the beauty of this province.
Yeah.
And so much land that is lying there, nothing is being done, it's lying fallow. And you can see, as in you, I know, kamasimi lakudala. When I want to go bayakha because it's closer to the freeway and all of that. Then I knew a man who used to be the general manager of the East London fresh produce market before Mbulu.
Okay.
And I asked him many questions. Just give me a bit of research on this thing. He told me many things now. But one thing stayed with me. He said 70% of the produce on the floor at the East London fresh produce market is from outside the Eastern Cape. Did you know, you mean outside East London? He says, no, outside the Eastern Cape. I said, John. Now that sparked something in me. I was like, no, man, in this beautiful province that is endowed with the most beautiful land and soils, among us now, we've got good enough rainfall. Why? So that piqued my interest, and I started looking for land.
Yeah.
And I spent a number of time looking at different farms. The first farm in Ndivi is the farm I ended up buying.
Okay.
I came back 7 months later. After I had put in the initial offer, it was rejected, and I walked away. But the first farm I had viewed is what I believe God had set aside for me. And that by the time the Buya and Zofagi offer, there were 2 other people Pamguam. Now, if you're buying a property, you will know that it's either no, there are 2 other offers, so you must wait for those offers to either go through or they fail. They failed, and my offer.
So you were destined for that.
So I ended up buying a farm in 2017, and I remember the one time that I invited you and Uchiano Pacha. And I'm saying, no, I'm showing you, this is the land and all. And you're like, hey, man, later, do you have a plantation yet? What do you mean you have a plantation? What are all these trees? It was actually land that was overgrown with trees. Because I bought umslaba ongasebenzi. So everything had to start from scratch.
Yeah.
You know, that land that you thought was a plantation is actually one of the land we're using now, we're growing. So that's how I got into it. I thought I would make money, but I ended up losing a lot of money in it. And the reason I stayed was not because I loved it. It was when the Vugek saying, I'm thinking of all the money I've put in this thing. And I'm like, this thing can't fail. And I think that is an important motivator in people. And I think most people will say that land reform, there's failure, I say because of 1, 2, 3. If you don't have a skin in the game, I would have walked away. If I had been given money by government, I would have probably bought myself a 4x4 and moved to Joburg and Dikelo Mal in the army because this thing is tough. But it was because it was my money, it was my pension, it was my children's money that had gone into it. So this thing could not fail. So that made me stay. The fact that eventually I fell in love with it, I don't imagine myself doing anything else now. And that eventually it started to reward me. It's something that came eventually. But it's closer, we say, you know, and if you pursue it, and you are steadfast about it, and you are resolute, Balendo is going to work. And you work on it every day painstakingly, even through painful times. And you just keep at it. So that's how I stumbled into this thing, into farming.
Yeah, I think as a follow-up questions to that, can you share with us some of the biggest challenges that you stumbled on as you are transitioning now from journalism to farming?
So I didn't struggle transitioning from journalism to farming because farming actually benefited my journalism because it made me a better person.
Okay.
When I started this thing, it was about I'm going to make money. I'm going to sell cabbages because it's a staple diet. And as you look as Ndwan, I'm going to sell goats. That's it. Right? I'm still doing that. Right? But it was not that easy. But generally, I'm an impulsive person. And quick decisions. Right? I'm impulsive. I'm impatient. Farming forces you to be patient. You literally plant. you pray, and you wait.
And you wait.
Whatever I plant today, I will only reap in 3 months' time.
Yeah. No physical intervention.
So there is
to
nothing I
fast-track
can
it.
do to fast track the process.
Yes.
So that understanding and actually believing in the process is something that I apply even I've applied in journalism, where I understand, but no, guys, if it takes time, time is actually not a problem because you don't own the time anyway. So if it is going to work eventually, just be patient. So that has taught me patience, Tabana. I've learned to be patient, but also it teaches you can't farm without faith.
Yes. Yes.
Literally, you cannot. Because think about this thing. You buy seed to plant 50 or 10 or 100 hectares. So you bury seed in the ground over summer. Gubano tell that thing is going to germinate. Who told you that when at the end of the season, it's 5 tons per hectare yield was a fuman? So you can't do this thing without faith.
Without faith, yes.
So it brought me closer to God, and it actually helped me in my spiritual journey, because I think I'm a better person now because of farming. I didn't go to farming for those reasons. But you know what can happen, Devan? And it happened in February 2019. I was driving from Devon, and there was a storm, and then then it cleared. Then my mother calls me, hey, konakela. Once again, hey, so you have done everything right as a farmer. You have used the right amount of fertilizer, you've used the right irrigation, you have done everything right. But for 30 minutes, 30 minutes only, the storm chooses the path of your field and it flattens everything. And then 30 minutes later, the sun is out. That can be back home.
And that is
so there are 2 things you can do there.
Yeah.
It's either you cry and you wail and you wallow in self-pity, or what do? You do what I did. Take a tractor and you plow that into the ground. Because my loss now will fertilize the soil for the next season.
Wow.
And that's an important lesson that carries me through life. There's no time to cry.
Yeah.
Because now, what I've lost now, I have better soil next season. Whatever I'm planting next will be better. And that is an important lesson, Tabani, that farming has taught me, which I apply to every aspect of my life. And I'm also more positive about life.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this part alone is a classroom even to myself, and I believe that even those that are watching right now, they are learning something from Sbu's journey. And then then how did your experience in journalism prepare you for the unexpected challenges, some of them that you talked about in farming?
So I say journalism was good in that it carried me when the farming side was wobbling. The fact that I was still working was actually good, because this thing was not easy. I didn't get any land restitution or money and this thing was actually built from the podium.
It's not an inheritance.
So it's not an inheritance. So where I am now, had I had money, I would have done it within a year.
Yeah.
But it took 8 years, right, to get to this point, to a point where we've bought equipment, we've introduced drip irrigation system, we've bought our own 5-ton truck. God has been good. But it's actually the lessons that I've learned in farming that have made me a better journalist, that have made me a better manager. And also, you work with people.
Yeah.
But also, it's therapy. And and I'll explain what I mean.
Yeah.
You know, I say to people, you don't need a holiday. You need a change of scenery.
Okay.
Because even if you were Botabano, you're Venice or Paris, for the 6 days you are there, every day you've got 6 in, it's breakfast, go 7, you've got this appointment, go 7 p.m. there's the opera. So for all of that time, there are activities that you've packed into your, because we want to make the most of it. But when you come back refreshed. So it's that change of scenery.
Yeah.
So the farm, because journalism is high pressure and it's very challenging. It's very difficult, especially in the latter years, because now journalism has been disrupted by digital disruption. Newspapers are losing circulation. How do you stay positive? So the farm has actually worked as therapy for me, because it's it would be a different space. When I drive in, like as I'm zong and shake 18.
Sure.
My problems are different. As I park there, puti ipamp itin, elatakana alzelang, ipihoketil itin, sibetwa pa disease etil. So my problems are different.
Yeah.
The people are different. So that has actually helped me find the balance. And these are things I never thought were possible, but those are things I've learned along the way.
Now, later, can you tell us more about your farm now? Where you at? What is it that you are farming, and what are your goals in the, I don't want to say far future, in the near future?
So Tabane, when I wrote my business plan, I just said, I'm going to sell cabbages, I'm going to do goats. Not because that is what I want to do.
Yeah.
The cabbages were always, and the goats were always a means to an end. It was always about the start. Where I want to see this thing is actually, it get to the point where I'll become the biggest goat producer in this country, or even this continent and the world.
That's possible.
But with farming, in primary agriculture, there's no money. You make some money. Money is in processing, is in the value chain. So my interest is now getting into the value chain where we start packaging, cutting, chopping, and packaging, and then to a point where we're actually the front end, where you're actually selling directly.
Okay.
You know, because we have digital disruption, we've got AI. AI If there's one thing I'm sure about, there is no one magic pill.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it fills all your nutritional value. Yes, you may still take supplements, vitamin A, but you still need to eat.
Yeah.
So you can never go wrong with food. So for me, that's where I want to go with this thing. But
Sure.
Where we are now, I mean, my farm is a 46-hectare farm, and we do cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, right? The cabbage family. In fact, there's the same thing, but I'll explain that to you.
Okay.
One day. Broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage are the same family. And then we do potato in winter, and then in summer we do butternut as well.
Okay.
So those are the things that actually balance the farm. I mean, I've got I think there's no less than 10 people who work at the farm. Okay. Those are permanent, others are casual, they come and go, but it's also about making an impact. You know, I've seen this thing grow over the years, and I laugh when I think about that day when you went to the farm and you saw what you thought was a plantation, but it was overgrown fields to what it is now. So we plant. What we do is that we plant on rotation. We've got over 5-6 hectares on rotation, which means every 2 weeks we're planting. Yeah, and that's under irrigation. And now we've introduced drip irrigation. Drip irrigation, Getabane, is precision. Is about precision. So amanzi aya directly to the plant. Okay. Right? It's distributed by the tape directly to the plant. We save more water, right? But we're also getting more yield in terms of the return. So that's where we are. We supply a number of stores here in the Eastern Cape. There's a retail chain that we supply. That has helped a lot. But I think more than anything, this takes me back to the importance of being sure of what you're doing and actually making bold decisions, because the one Bible verse that I like referencing, I think it's Job 22. I think it's Job 2 verse 28, or Job 22 verse 28, where it says, "Decree a thing and it shall be established." Yes. Right. In that, do not be afraid. And Tina Singabandu bati no man. Because no, declare it boldly and pursue it. You know, because the very same Bible tells you that a man's heart can plan his path, but it is the Lord who guides your steps. Yeah. So if you take that and you take that book of Proverbs 16 verse 9, and that becomes my mantra, nothing can deter me, because I believe if I've prayed about it and if I'm confident about it.
Yeah. That's the power of the word.
That's it.
In fact, God himself, he formed the world with a whisper.
That's it. Everything that he created was from here.
Said, so we are his creation. That's it. Wow.
That's it.
Later, because of time, there's we have a feature here that we call Approach the Podium in 60 seconds, where you address the audience and encourage those who want to take bold steps like the ones that you took, to say it is not late and to talk to them about procrastination. I'm the graduate of procrastination myself. So let's approach the podium.
So my 60 seconds of pep talk, I always say to people that whatever you set your mind to, you just have to pursue it. You have to believe it. You have to pray about it. And I think in whatever I've done in life and whatever I'm still to do, I believe that whatever decisions I make, I center those around God. And it took me a while to realize that. I used to think it was my own wisdom. I used to think I was smart. But once the light bulb goes off, you realize it's actually God. And that helps you. So procrastination, please do not waste time. Make a decision, pray about it, and sometimes ask for a sign. Say, God, I'm not sure. Give me a sign. I just want to know whether this is a good decision or not. And trust me, you will get that sign. That makes it easy for you to make decisions, even decisions that will affect you financially. And that's what helps pursue. In fact, in journalism, I learned one thing. I used to interview successful people. And I would always ask them one question: what is your one regret? And the one thing that always came up, people would say, I wish I had started earlier. And that stayed with me, because we waste a lot of time. We do things, that's so ugxothiwe emsebenzini, or sometimes retire. And you find people who said, I started a business during COVID. Why? Because they had been fired. But how much more if you are more prepared, if you had taken that bold decision and went with it? So whatever you want to do, there's nothing more powerful than the human mind. Just take the plunge, make the decision, be decisive, and do it. And pray about it, more importantly.
That's all the time we have for today's episode of Insightful Journeys. I want to thank Sbu for sharing his inspiring story with us. Your journey from journalism to farming is a testament to the power of courage, resilience, and passion. To our viewers, thank you for tuning in and being part of this journey. Sbu's story is a reminder that it's never too late to pursue our dreams and make a meaningful impact in our communities. If you'd like to learn more about Sbu's farm or connect with him, please visit our show notes for more information. Join us next time on Insightful Journeys, where we'll explore more remarkable stories of innovation, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. Until then, stay inspired, stay informed, and keep shining your light.